Yes, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to our AJA sessions. We did take a little break over the Hug period. Welcome to our regulars, and welcome also to any new people if you're joining us for the first time. My name is Alan Friedman. I'm Vice President of the Australian Jewish Association, and I'm again the MC for this evening. We're now streaming our Zoom sessions via J-Air Jewish Community Radio in Melbourne. So there will be some people listening on 98 FM, or they may even be listening through the website, which is j-air.com.au. So welcome to you as well. Also visible on your screens are David Adler, President of the AJA, as well as our guest for tonight, Itamar Marcus, who we will formally introduce in a moment. Our format will be similar to what we've done before. We're actually going to hear a presentation from Itamar for about 30 or 35 minutes, after which we will open up for questions from the audience. And just a reminder for those watching us on Zoom, if you want to ask a question, you need to let us know by raising your hand electronically, and you do that in under the reaction icon down the bottom. The chat function is available as usual, but also as usual, we ask that you keep to the topic. And for those that are not so familiar with Zoom, you do have the choice of having either a speaker view where you see the main person speaking, or a gallery view where you see everybody. And in the top right-hand corner of your screen, there's a little icon and you can toggle between the two. Okay, so we'll get into it. The war being waged against Israel by the Palestinian Arabs has many components, one of which has been a propaganda blitz from the Arab media for the last 50 years, which has later found its way onto social media. The Palestinians have not been shy about what they want, which is essentially the destruction of the state of Israel, and that's exactly what they tell the wider Arab audience. The Palestinian Authority's promotion and glorification of terror is also well known to this audience. But the problem was that word rarely got out, the world rarely got to hear the ugly truth, at least until Palestinian Media Watch was started by Itamar Marcus in 1996. Since then, PMW has uncovered and notified donor countries when the Palestinian Authority rewards terrorism by using their foreign aid to pay salaries to terrorist prisoners and also money to families of, quote, martyrs, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Its research led to the US Taylor Force Act and Israel's anti-pay for slay law, and has impacted funding policies in a multitude of countries, including Australia, and the AJA is proud to have contributed in some small way to the halving of Australia's money to UNRWA from $20 million to $10 million, and even better, the cessation of Australian cash grants to the PA. Itamar Marcus travels the world speaking to members of Congress, parliaments and governments, presenting PMW's findings that have literally changed the way the world sees the Palestinian Authority. We're delighted to have him with us tonight. Itamar, welcome to Australia via Zoom, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and I thank you very much for inviting me. I have been to Australia many times and spoken to Parliament as well as to many communities, and it's always a pleasure to be with Australians. Okay,
thank you. Now we're going to hear a presentation from you, so you should have screen sharing arrangements. So please fire away, and then we'll ask you some questions.
Okay. Just 1 second. Okay, thank you very much. Today's topic is really a double topic, the Palestinian Authority promotion and glorification of terror, with a focus really on how does the Palestinian Authority create teenage terrorists. We've seen for the last number of years, so many young children going out on terror attacks. We've had 13-year-olds who've gone out with knives and tried to stab Israelis. Many of them in the end are killed during their terror attacks. But the question is, how does the Palestinian Authority convince so many people, a whole society, to support terror, to glorify terror, and how do they focus on children to get children to be actively involved in terror? Now, Palestinian Media Watch, in order to find out what's happening in the Palestinian world, we study the entire Palestinian society, all of their official sources. We study their sports events, their school books, culture, everything about the PA that we can see from the official sources. And when I say sporting events that are run in the Palestinian Authority school system, official events from culture that are on TV. So we're seeing the messages that the Palestinian Authority wants its people to hear. Now, I'm going to open up with a story about a 17-year-old Palestinian boy. This is in May of this year, a few months ago. He went on a terror attack on the way home from school. And you see here, this is his school bag. He went to school. He went to school with this knife. And on the way home, he stabbed this stabbed two Israelis, actually. And this was the article in the Palestinian Authority newspaper. Zahudi al-Tawil, 17-year-old youth, was shot and died as a martyr. Local sources said that the martyr is an outstanding high school student in the science track. Why would an outstanding student in the science track, any outstanding student, take a knife on the way to school and decide he's going to kill Israelis? This is the question that I want to answer with this evening's presentation. How does the PA turn children into terrorists? How do they turn good people into terrorists? Now, I mentioned that we even study Palestinian Authority sports, and I'm going to give you some examples first from sports, because sports is so innocent, and that's why it impacts and gives a very important window into the Palestinian Authority and its messages. This is an article about a sporting festival named the Dalal Mughrabi Sports Festival. It was named after a female named Dalal Mughrabi. There have been dozens of sporting events named after her, schools named after her. Who is this Dalal Mughrabi? Now, note also that the girls at this participating in the festival, they had the picture of Dalal Mughrabi on their sweatshirts, so that the entire days of this sports festival, they actually were looking at the picture of this woman. Who was she? She was a terrorist who hijacked this bus in 1978, led to the murder of 37 civilians, 12 of them children. So that because Dalal Mughrabi led a terror attack, in fact, it was the most lethal terror attack in Israel's history. She has probably more sporting events and more schools named after than any other individual. She has 5 schools named after Dalal Mughrabi. We also have 31 schools named after other terrorists. Look how Dalal Mughrabi appears in the school books. This school book published in 2017. It has since been taken out, but I want you to see how the PA educates through it. It was taken out because of international pressure after this was publicized. Look what they wrote in this school book for 5th grade children. Section on heroes. Heroes have an important position in every nation. We're proud of them, sing their praise, learn their history, name children after them. Every one of us wishes to be like them. And then there's a list of 10 of these great heroes. One of them was Dalal Mughrabi. And they're telling the children, everyone wishes to be like them. These heroes are the crown of their nation, the symbol of its glory, the best of the best. Bravo to the heroes and scorn to the cowards. Now, this is an incredible ending to this chapter. Bravo to the heroes. Dalal Mughrabi, of course, died in her terror attack. And they're saying to the kids, these are 11-year-olds, maybe 12-year-olds, scorn to you if you're a coward. If you don't want to be a terrorist, murder Israelis, be killed as a martyr, then you're a coward, and scorn to you. So this is an incredible message, and it's really showing us a window to the whole, everything that's wrong with the Palestinian Authority is found in this particular item here. Glorifying dying, using sort of psychological pressure on children. You're a coward if you don't want to be a martyr and kill Israelis being a martyr. So this is a Palestinian school book. Now, to show you how a more recent terrorist and how these messages are daily in some places, this is the entrance to a school in Bethlehem. And we saw this picture and we enlarged this plaque over here. And what does it say on this plaque? It's to commemorate the martyrs of the Al-Aqsa Intifada. And then it specifies at the bottom, particular martyr. Who is it? Martyr Ayat al-Akhras, who was a 17-year-old girl suicide bomber. So every day that these girls go into school, every time they go in and out, they see a picture, they see that their school is literally dedicated to this suicide bomber who was their own age, who was literally their own age. It's a message here of, if you want to be a hero, if you want to be recognized, even girls your age, you can also be suicide bombers. This is the Palestinian Authority school in Bethlehem. So the first thing that we're seeing, and I've given you a few examples amongst the hundreds and hundreds on our website, there's of how do you turn children into terrorists, how do you turn good, is by role modeling, by social status. You promise children, you show children that those terrorists before them were honored, those terrorists before them were admired, they were rewarded. You want to be like them. This is the first thing. This is a very prominent part of the atmosphere in Palestinian Authority society. Now, getting down to some of the more fundamental hate messages that lead to terror, I would say this is one of the main messages. Jews are the source of evil in the world. This is the Palestinian Authority message to its people, and it's coming from the top of the Palestinian Authority. The person you're going to hear speaking in just a moment is Mahmoud al-Abash. This is Mahmoud Abbas's, that's the PA leader, president, Mahmoud Abbas's advisor on Islam. He gives still today most of the sermons on Palestinian Authority television. He's head of the Sharia courts. This is Mr. Religion of the Palestinian Authority. And this is what he said the conflict is about. He's defining why are we fighting Israel, and listen to what he says.
هذا الصراع المحتدم ها هنا في فلسطين بيننا وبين هذا الاحتلال المجرم صورة أخرى من صور الصراع التاريخي بين الحق والباطل، بين الخير والشر. على مدى التاريخ كان هناك صراع بين الخير والشر. الخير يمثله الأنبياء وأتباع الأنبياء، والشر يمثله الأبالسة وأتباع الأبالسة، الشياطين وأتباع الشياطين. ونحن ها هنا لسنا بدعا من الأمر. هو صراع بين حقيقتين، حقيقة الخير وحقيقة الشر، بين مشروعين، مشروع الرحمن ومشروع الشر.
Okay. The conflict between the Palestinians and Israel, he doesn't even mention territory. It's a conflict throughout history. Before there was Israel, there's a history of a conflict between good and evil is represented by the devils and their supporters. In other words, the Jews, because we're talking about a period long before there was Israel. He's talking about Jews. Jews are the supporters of the devil. Jews are supporters of Satan. And he says that's why this is a conflict between Allah's project and Satan's project. Israel is Satan's project because Israel is made up of Jews, and Jews are in partnership with Satan in the world. This is coming from the most important religious figure in the Palestinian Authority. Like I said, till today, he continues to give the majority of sermons and has these positions as Abbas's advisor and head of the Sharia courts. Now, how is this message transmitted to children? That Jews are connected to Satan, that Jews are working for Satan? This is something that Palestinian Authority broadcast twice. It's a special series that they ran during the Ramadan, during the entire month. And it's about the early stage of Islam. And it describes how Satan was trying to destroy Muhammad and put an end to Islam. And who does Satan choose as his allies? He chooses the Jews. Look at these messages that are coming to children, to very young children, in the cartoon broadcast twice on Palestinian Authority TV.
لقد هزمنا يا لعين أمام جندي من جنود الله. إنه الرعب هو من هزم اليهود وأخرجهم من ديارهم في خزي وعار.
لقد بنيت خطتي على نار الحقد والكراهية التي تملأ قلوب.
Okay, so get a look at this very scary looking Satan and flames of here and fire. And his whole plan is because of the hatred that Jews have in their hearts for Muhammad. Now, we all know the status of Muhammad in Islam. We know that if you draw a picture of Muhammad, it's a capital crime. If you insult him, it's a capital crime. And how many people we know in recent years have been murdered because of drawing pictures or insulting Muhammad. And here they're saying that the Jews have hatred in their hearts and they are working with Satan to destroy Muhammad. This is the message coming to very impressionable young children. It's a cartoon appearing, like I said, this entire series. Palestinian Authority ran it twice during the entire month of Ramadan. Now, here's another important example because of the person and because of what happened to him. This is a Palestinian Authority religious figure. He had a weekly program on PATV. And in one of his messages on TV, he talked about humanity will never live in peace and fortune or tranquility as long as they, the Jews, are corrupting the land. Humanity won't live in peace as long as there are Jews. And then he says, if a fish in the sea fights another fish, I'm sure the Jews are behind it. A fish fights a fish. In other words, every single thing that goes wrong in the world, every fight in the world, every conflict in the world, the Jews are responsible. Now, this is horrific, horrific anti-Semitism, horrific Jew hatred. What happened to this religious figure following these statements? Well, he actually had an appointment with Mahmoud Abbas, where Abbas appointed him to be head of an entire school system in the Palestinian Authority, head of the Al-Azhar school system in Gaza. So, and his picture appeared in the newspaper sitting right next to Mahmoud Abbas. So being a vicious hater of Jews and disseminating the worst possible anti-Semitism, portraying Jews as the most evil force in the world, responsible for all evil in the world, that gets him an appointment to be head of an entire school system, appointed by the head of the Palestinian Authority. Now, I'm showing you Palestinian Authority, but I'm going to show you Fatah for a moment. Fatah is the political party of Mahmoud Abbas. Fatah is the one that is perceived around the world as the so-called moderates, together with the PA, who you see already is not at all moderate. But I want to show you what Fatah has an educational program called its Commission of Information and Culture. They did a documentary, a mini documentary on the Jews in Europe. I want to show you how they presented the history of Jews in Europe to their own people.
هناك في أوروبا يقيم القوم مخيماتهم وأماكن سكناهم، جيتوهات ضيقة تبنى أعمدتها على الانفكاك عن البشر غرورا واشمئزازا من أغيار لا يرتقون إلى مكانتهم، من أناس هم أفاعٍ أبناء أفاعٍ حسب رؤيتهم. هناك تحاك كل مؤامرات الاستغلال المادي والبشري للغير، ويكره سكان الأرض جيتوهات القوم ومخازن تصدير الحقد والاستغلال ليتحولوا إلى مكون معادى.
Okay. Literally this entire presentation, and it goes on, it gets even worse at the end. The Jews worked with the Nazis to gain wealth. Jews were hated because of their racism and filthy behavior. We are responsible for anti-Semitism. That's the message coming here. The ghettos were not made by the non-Jews to get rid of to isolate the Jews. No, the Jews put themselves in ghettos. That's what they teach, in order to be able to scheme against the non-Jewish world. It's literally turning the world upside down. And who is this? This is the educational program of Fatah movement, of Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah movement. Some of the other quotes here: the Jewish tribe led the project to enslave humanity. The Jews allied with the Nazis to accumulate wealth. Jews say we are people, others are animals. So this is the kind of things that are coming, intense Jew hatred from the Palestinian Authority to its people and from Fatah. Just give you one just from earlier this year. Because of the Jews' evil, the Holocaust was the Jews' payment for their wickedness. We've heard this a number of times from Palestinian Authority officials, from religious figures on TV. And here we heard it earlier this year on an educational program dealing with history. The Holocaust was the Jews' payment for their wickedness. This is what this man said. This is what the moderator of this program said, that the Zionist movement paid for their conspiracies. In other words, Jews were killed again. Not just were we responsible for anti-Semitism, but even the Holocaust was payback time for the Europeans because of Jewish wickedness. Okay, so this is the first message. The Jews, and it's a Jewish state, of course, Israel is a Jewish state. The Jews are the evil force in the world that everyone is suffering from. Now, then it focuses down, the second message is Israel endangers Palestinians. Israel's trying to kill Palestinians. This goes beyond the specific general clauses about Jews, and I'll give you some of these examples. I started off with this picture before on the story of this 17-year-old terrorist who stabbed this Israeli and then was shot. I didn't read the whole thing. Now I'm going to read the whole thing to you, how they describe this on Palestinian Authority in the newspaper and on TV. Here we go. 17-year-old youth was shot by the occupation forces and died as a martyr yesterday after a stabbing operation by Israeli extremists, by extremist Israelis. They turned it upside down, just like they turn our history upside down. Literally within hours after this event, this Palestinian Authority stabbed an Israeli. They turned it into a stabbing operation by Israelis. And this is Fatah's TV news. Listen.
اليوم شرطة الاحتلال قتلت شاب في مقتبل العمر بحجة تنفيذ عملية طعن وهي الحجة.
They killed a young man starting his life on the pretext he was carrying out a stabbing attack, which is the pretext they use every time. And this is important to know. Every time a Palestinian is killed in the last few years, just about, when they're killed in stabbing attacks, they claim that Israel uses this as a pretext. They've even said that Israel plants knives on the ground next to the dead Palestinians after they'd murdered them. It's an outrageous libel. It's a terrible blood libel. But of course, if you're a Palestinian and you're hearing this over and over again, and maybe this was a relative of yours, or he lived in the city where you live, and you hear the news reports that Israel murdered him for no reason and placed a knife next to him, of course, this is the kind of thing that is going to get you extremely furious at Israelis and even hate Israelis. Now, they even do it to the youngest of children. This is the program, The Best Home. Children in the studio audience can be 3, 4, 5, and 6. And look what the host tells the very young children. She's told them the following: the occupation, which is the term they use for Israel, is deliberately killing Palestinian children. This is a very painful thing. So she's telling 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, you have to be watched out for Israelis because they are deliberately killing you. So these are the messages coming to Palestinians. And this is just a few months ago. Again, the same libel here. You have a picture here, and this is Fatah Facebook. Boycott your enemy's products. And then what do they have here as part of the call for a boycott? They have a barcode, and the barcode has a Star of David, and it's dripping with blood. And you have a dead child in the middle here, or an injured child in the middle. Again, a total blood libel here. Israelis are killing Palestinian children. So this is Palestinian. So they have the general hatred. Jews are evil, and then they focus in. They are specifically killing Palestinians. A great libel that the Palestinian Authority repeats all the time is that we are like Nazis. I want to show you how many examples just in the early part of this year when we put this together. Here we have this is before the elections. They have Adolf Netanyahu. This was, again, Fatah, Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah. And these are some quotes from the Palestinian papers, the official papers. Early this year, Israel's becoming a state most similar to Nazi Germany, means more cruel and despicable than what the Nazis did to the Jews. Detention camps have become similar to Nazi crematorium. What is happening in Palestine is the second Holocaust. Again, the demonization goes on and on and on. There are many, many more examples of this. So the second thing is that Israelis are killing Palestinians. Israelis are treating Palestinians the Nazi-like treatment, like crematorium. This is what they're saying to their people. Now, the third category to develop hatred, Israel is destroying Islamic holy sites. We know that over 95% of the Palestinian population, always in polls, say that religion is important to them. They are religious, which, by the way, explains some of the strength of Hamas. We won't get into that now. And here they say Israel is threatening Islamic holy sites. And I'll just give you 2 examples of this, one at the adult level, one at the children level. Of course, the holiest Islamic site for the Palestinians is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is built on the Temple Mount. And of course, Israelis go up to pray on the Temple Mount daily now under new regulations that are allowing this, despite all the Palestinian threats. In any case, this is the Mufti of the Palestinian Authority, Mohammed Hussein, talking just a couple of months ago. And he says, there is an attack against the existence of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. There are calls to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque and establish the alleged temple in its place. So this accusation, we hear this usually a few times a week, certainly every week, that Israel's planning to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque and replace it with the alleged temple. They say alleged temple because they deny there ever was a temple there. They don't ever just use the word temple alone. They say Hekal Mazum. Mazum means fictitious or alleged. This is the way they refer to the temple. But in any case, here's the libel. Israel's trying to destroy it. Now, I want to show you what an early age they're teaching this. This is a Palestinian school book for grade 7. And this is the cartoon that they put in the school book. You see the tractor here digging under the Dome of the Rock. And here you see the Star of David on the tractor. And listen to the text. They don't just tell the child to look at the picture. Think about and look at the following cartoon and write a paragraph about the message the illustrator wants to convey. So every child is going to have to sit down and write the following words. Israel is trying to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, so that every Palestinian child is getting this education at the young stage. This libel, by the way, is the most lethal libel of the Palestinian Authority. If you remember the Intifada, what the Palestinians call Intifada, that terror war that lasted more than 4 years. What do they call it? The Al-Aqsa Intifada. They claimed they were defending the Al-Aqsa Mosque. A few years ago in 2014 and again in 2015, there were terror waves, knife intifadas. Also, they were all connected to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So this is the most lethal libel. I would say almost all the Israelis, I would say over 2,000 Israelis since the Oslo Accords have been killed, murdered because of this libel that Israel is trying to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's violating the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's by stepping in it, they say Israelis or Jews going on the Temple Mount defile the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So here we have Palestinian children are literally growing up with this message. Now, the final of these messages is that Palestinians are victims of Israel's existence. Now, the Palestinian Authority told the world that when they signed the Oslo Accords, they said they accepted Israel's existence, accepted Israel's right to exist. I want to show you that is, I'm going to give you just a couple of examples amongst probably thousands on our website of this message that Israel doesn't exist, doesn't have a right to exist. Now I'll show you, this is from earlier this year. This is a little documentary on a children's program on Palestinian TV. Listen to the way they present all of Israel as occupied Palestine.
السهل الساحلي الفلسطيني هو وجه فلسطين نحو البحر المتوسط والعالم العربي ونقطة احتكاك حضاري بين الشرق والغرب ويمثل بوابة فلسطين للعالم. يمتد الساحل الفلسطيني من جبل الكرمل شمالاً إلى رفح على الحدود المصرية جنوباً ويقع بين المرتفعات الجبلية الفلسطينية شرقاً والبحر الأبيض المتوسط غرباً. فيه العديد من الموانئ مثل ميناء حيفا وعكا ويافا وأسدود وعسقلان وغزة وقد توافدت عليه مختلفة عبر العصور طمعاً للاستفادة من موقعه وما زال الساحل الفلسطيني تحت الاحتلال الإسرائيلي منذ عام 48.
Palestinian postal plane has been under Israeli occupation since 1948. Now, the entire so-called Palestinian coastal plain, as you saw, this is all of Israel. Literally, they went through the entire Israel, Haifa, Akko, Jaffa, Ashdod, Ashkelon, all of this is Israel, but it's called the Palestinian coastal plain. There is no recognition of Israel's legitimacy or right to exist in the Palestinian Authority. They'll recognize Israel when they speak at the UN, they'll recognize it when they come to Canberra, but when they are in their own world, to their own people, and the way children are being brought up, there is no recognition of Israel. Everything is an occupation. Palestinians tell the world, well, we're against the occupation. And every Palestinian knows what that means. That means all of Israel. It doesn't just mean Judea and Samaria and the Gaza Strip. Now, they give the identical messages in maps. And I'll just give you a few examples. This is from a Palestinian school book. It's called the Geographical Area of the Palestinian State. Under international pressure, they took this out as well, but I just want to show you how this continues. First of all, if you remember the school that I showed you earlier in Bethlehem, I showed you the one that glorifies the 17-year-old suicide bomber, Ayat al-Akhras. Well, here what you have is that identical map at the entrance to the school. So they're not only getting a message of supporting terror as they enter school, they're also getting a message of every bit of Israel is under Palestinian or will be eventually under the Palestinian state. Of course, those are the colors of the flag of the Palestinian Authority. And it continues also very actively in summer camps. This summer, we had dozens of pictures like this. This is one of them, August of this year. dozens of pictures of children in summer camps, in Palestinian summer camps, and this is the map of Palestine, making maps of their country, and their country includes every bit of Israel, so that this is not something that, so they might have been forced by the international community to take it out of one school, but it is a prominent part of the messaging that they continue to give till this day to every Palestinian child. Now, I'll show you something that appeared on TV just literally a couple of weeks ago, how they're continuing. This is actually interesting. This was a little girl reciting a poem in English on Palestinian TV. Listen to her message.
Even if you destroy our homes above our heads, victory will come out from under the rubble. They told the mountains everywhere that they are my friends. Long live a free and broad Palestine. No matter how long the Israel occupation lasted, Palestine will remain for the Palestinians, from the sea and the river. They are the owners of the land.
Palestine will remain free from the river to the sea. They are the owners of the land. Again, there is no Israel. Israel has no right to exist. Eventually, it will be Palestinian. And it's like I said, just literally a few weeks ago on Palestinian TV. There's no surprise that a young girl being interviewed would recite this, because as I showed to you, this is the way Palestinian children are being brought up. Now, these are all the reasons for hatred. Jews are the source of evil. The Palestinians are being targeted. They're targeting your holy sites. They have no right to exist. They stole your land. For all these reasons, therefore, killing Israelis and Jews is justice, it's self-defense, and it's even acceptable under Islam. These are the messages, and I'm going to show you this now in their own words. And the first one I'm going to show you, this is that same Mahmoud al-Habash. I told you he is the Supreme Sharia judge. He's Abbas's advisor. Listen to all the reasons he gives to Palestinians for killing Israelis. Now, he doesn't say the word Israelis, but every Palestinian knows exactly what he's talking about, because listen to the reasons he says they have a right to fight and kill Israelis. And what he does to make it even worse is he starts off from a Quran with a quote from the Quran. And what words is he quoting? He's quoting the words, kill them, kill them. And then he says, who does this apply to? And then he lists all the reasons to kill Israelis. Listen to this, Abbas's advisor on official PA TV.
إذن اقتلوهم عائدة على المعتدين ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين واقتلوهم المعتدين اقتلوهم لأنه لو أجا واحد يعتدي علي يعتدي على بيتي يعتدي على أرضي يعتدي على وطني يعتدي على مالي يعتدي على عرضي يعتدي على أهلي أنا مأمور إني أقاتله مأمور إني أواجهه مأمور إني أقاومه ومسموح لي إذا لزم الأمر أن أقتله كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وكما قالت هذه الآية واقتلوهم حيث ثقفتموهم ما داموا معتدين ما داموا محاربين ما داموا يستهدفون وجودكم ويستهدفون.
Okay, and then he goes on and on. Now, the other interesting thing he quotes here, kill them wherever you find them. This is an unbelievable statement. We know how many times Israelis have been murdered by Palestinians. Literally, seemingly, they hadn't even prepared terror attacks. We had years ago, the two Israeli boys from Tekoa were just hiking near a cave, and Palestinians happened to see them. They took rocks and they bashed their heads until the children died. Kill them wherever you find them. In many cases like this, that's the message again coming from Mr. Religion in the Palestinian Authority, the top religious figure of the Palestinian Authority. This is not Hamas. This is the Palestinian Authority. Kill them wherever you find them. Now, the Mufti, who's the highest official, he's actually appointed by the PA, works for Jordan. He says the same thing. Sharia obligates every Muslim to wage jihad against the thieving Jews. Also, horrific message coming from probably the second most important religious leader in the PA. I'll show you an example of promoting this for children. And this is something outrageous. This is June of this year. There was Palestinians were rioting in many different places, and a father brought his son to the riots. Now, listen to what the interviewer asks the father why she brought her 4-year-old, why he brought his 4-year-old son. Listen to the questions and answers here.
نيران تشتعل بالإطارات المطاطية الكوشوك والتي ابتدعتها وحدة الكوشوك في بلدة بيتا. أنا بشوفك جاي معك أبنائك، يعني ما بتخافوا في ظل هذا الوضع الخطير؟
يعني مقاومة الشعبية لما تعرض للخطر. يعني أنا ابني يوسف هذا بيحكي لي أنا بدي أطلع معك على
My son, my 4.5-year-old son told me, I want to go up with you to the mountain so that I'll go to paradise. You realize this child has heard so much brainwashing about dying as a martyr and that he'll get paradise if he goes to martyr, that apparently he told his father he wants to go because that way he can die and go to paradise. It's, again, an incredible statement and a tragic statement of how successful the Palestinian Authority brainwashing is, even of the very youngest children. Now, I'm going to show you one final way that they promote this. It's one thing to have a religious leader talking about killing Jews. It's quite another when you make it popular by putting it to music. And that's what they do. They put literally murder to music. And I want to show you, first of all, I'm going to start with a quote here from an expert from Oxford University talking about ISIS. This is a few years ago. She talked about ISIS. She said, the rhyme and the beat, especially appealing to youth. The catchy sing-along method for propagating ISIS ideology means it spreads quickly. It's far more effective than sermons or theological debates and treaties. Well, let me tell you something. ISIS learned this from the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Authority has been promoting murder through music probably since the year 2000, definitely since the year 2000. I want to show you a couple of these recent examples. This is a year ago, and what's so important is this was on television when there was nothing going on. There was no violence, there was no war, there was nothing, and yet Palestinian Authority chose to broadcast this numerous times on official PATV. Again, we have at the end here, how sweet is the taste of martyrdom. I've found none like it. Put on the explosive bell, blow it up in Haifa, Atlit. This is unbelievable. This is when there's no violence, there's nothing going on, and the Palestinian Authority is running this video over and over again, encouraging people to be suicide bombers. And like I say, this is one example. This has been going on for years, and we have hundreds of songs like this on PATV. Here's one that ran literally for 3 years on Palestinian TV, literally glorifying suicide bombing.
يا رب اوعدنا بنترجاك مليون عريس وعروسة وفرحة كتبوا الكتاب.
Okay, begging God, begging Allah to grant martyrdom for Al-Aqsa. I remember I've told you how important Al-Aqsa is for them. Literally. Now, what do? They have a picture here of who? Wafa Idris, the first female suicide bomber. That's who they're putting here. They're absolutely promoting. And like I said, this ran from 2017 through 2020, dozens, probably 50, 100 times on Palestinian TV, a constant messaging. Official PATV, Fatah Run Auda TV, constantly promoting the idea of suicide bombing for people. And again, 2017, there was no war going on. There was nothing going on, yet they're promoting the suicide bombing. This was many, many times. This was 20 times within a week this year. I fired my SATs, I threw my bomb, I detonated my explosive belts. Our bullets will make the sound of joy to herald victory. It's continuous. Like I said, so many different songs. And the final thing I want to show you here is what's the end game? What's the end game for the Palestinian Authority? Two things here I want to read to you, and then we'll open it up to questions. This is a sermon from a number of years ago, but it sort of summarizes all the different messages. It's on official PATV, which is controlled again by the official Palestinian Authority. These are the Jews. They haven't changed throughout history. Allah made them apes and pigs. They're corrupting, scheming, plotting against humanity, not just against Muslims, but against all humanity. This we heard from the other religious figure. Jews are a danger to all humanity. Allah cursed them. Now listen to this. Not only are the Jews a danger to all humanity, we are not fixable. Listen to his words. These malignant genes and cursed characteristics continue in them. They transfer them from generation to generation. They inherit it from father to son. Humanity will never be able to live with them. Humanity can't live with the Jews. That's the message. We have a genetic problem. We pass on our evil from father to son, from generation to generation. This is coming from official Palestinian Authority TV. So it sums up the message I've been giving you. And the end of it is a prayer for anticipation of the end of time, when Muslims will fight the Jews and exterminate them. And just to make sure everybody knows what he's talking about, he ends with the words, Allah, count them and kill them one by one. Do not leave even one. Allah, save humanity. We can't live with them. Exterminate every single last Jew on the face of the planet. This is coming from, like I say, official Palestinian Authority TV. And it doesn't sound bad to Palestinians, like I said, because it's been built up with all this demonization, so that killing and exterminating Jews is actually seen as something positive. Something positive for humanity. Humanity is suffering. Humanity can't live with them. Therefore, they have to be killed. This is the message coming from the Palestinian Authority to its people. One of the results of this, by the way, the ADL did a poll a number of years ago, the Anti-Defamation League, and they measured anti-Semitism in the world. The Palestinian Authority was found to be the most anti-Semitic population in the world. Not connected to Israel. All the questions had to do with Jews and Jewish control in the world, Jews evil, and the Palestinians are the worst in the world, a direct result of all of this Palestinian Authority education. The final item I'm going to play for you, and then we'll open up to questions, is listen to the way this Palestinian Authority religious figure, not just a religious figure, he is responsible for training all the sheikhs and the imams in the Palestinian Authority. That's his position. So he's training everybody on what to say in their religious sermons. And listen to what he says about the importance of Palestine for solving the world's problems.
بس أحداث القدس كل العالم بتأثر فيها، من بركتها اندثار كل الظلمة في العالم هنا. احنا إذا شفنا هجمة التتار وين كان نهايتهم؟ في فلسطين. الحروب الصليبية عشان نقربها زي داعش بالنسبة للمسلمين، هم رفعوا الصليب عشان يهدروا الدماء. الحروب الصليبية الدموية أيضا انتهت هان. فكل الطغاة والظلمة نهايتهم في فلسطين، وهذه من بركتها، وإن شاء الله نهاية اليهود وأمريكا التي تدعم اليهود.
Okay, Allah willing, the end of the Jews in America who supports the Jews will be in Palestine. As you know, the American government is trying very hard now to start funding the Palestinian Authority. They're starting to fund UNRWA again already in a big way, and they're talking about funding the Palestinian Authority in a large way, so that the Palestinian Authority can use that money to have the imams preach sermons about the fact that the Jews in America will all end together in Palestine. This is what is happening in the Palestinian Authority. So this is the message, and I want to get back to what we started. You know, you've heard about incitement to terror, incitement to murder. It is way beyond whatever you might think of in the word incitement. You might think of incitement as a sporadic message. This is not just, this is a full Palestinian Authority ideology. As you saw, it has many, many components. All the reasons why Jews are evil, Jews are dangerous, Israelis are dangerous, Israelis are a threat to Palestinians, a threat to their holy sites, have no right to exist, and therefore you have a right to kill them. And the end of time, they will be gone. That is the message coming from the Palestinian Authority to its people. It's a horrific message, and it is a constant message. Just say one final thing. In the introduction, it was mentioned that our work brought about the Taylor Force Act, where the United States cut off all funding to the PA. I want to tell you that there were Australian MPs in my office. I don't remember how many years, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Australian MPs. At that time, the Palestinian Authority was still receiving funding from Australia. I told them exactly what was going on in the PA. They saw a presentation similar to this. Of course, it was 2 years earlier with different material. At the end, I focused a lot on the Palestinian Authority paying salaries to terrorists with the funding that they're getting from the international community. The members of parliament said they would do something about this. They went back a week or two later. We heard the announcement that Australia was freezing funding to the PA and waiting for answers from the PA. And then about a month or two later, they announced that we did not get satisfactory answers from the Palestinian Authority. We're cutting off all funding to the PA, and we will now be only funding UNRWA. Now, UNRWA has its own problem, but the point is there was recognition by the Australian government that the Palestinian Authority is not worthy of funding, that they are terrorist supporters. So very, very good. Australia did it. Australia responded immediately to the presentation that I gave. There are countries throughout Europe that have seen this numerous times, and they keep looking for excuses to fund the Palestinian Authority. So thank you very much, Australia, for acting and doing the moral thing. Okay.
Thank you, Itamar. And I might add, Itamar, as I mentioned earlier, the Australian Jewish Association was instrumental, I would say, in having that funding cut. So we're proud of that. If you're listening on J-Air, this is a live simulcast of the Australian Jewish Association Zoom event, which we have every Wednesday night. Tonight there were a few audio clips which were in Arabic, of course. That doesn't usually happen, but I think you will have got the idea because Itamar translated them. Just before we go to questions, I'm going to hand back to David very quickly, just to tell us what's coming up next week, and then we'll go for questions. David?
There we are.
Yeah.
Okay. You can hear me now, I hope.
Yes.
Okay, two very brief messages. The first is anybody here who is not yet a member of the Australian Jewish Association, has not yet joined the email list, or hasn't made a contribution, please go to our website, jewishassociation.org.au, and make your connection. We need to be able to do events like this to connect with people like Itamar Marcus and do the advocacy, and we can't do it without support. And just to foreshadow what's happening next week, another highly topical issue, we have Professor Eugene Kontorovich on the subject of the importance of anti-BDS laws. Eugene was the principal author of the anti-BDS laws being used in the US right now to sanction Unilever and Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and he will be explaining how that works. And we are trying to get such legislation in Australia. So thank you, and back to Alan for questions.
Thanks, David. Now I've got a long list of questions here. I'm not sure how many we'll get through because the time is a little tight. I've got Michael, David and Joseph as the first three. So Michael, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Michael, you need to put up your hand so I can find you. There's a lot of people here.
Okay, while he's doing that, perhaps we'll go to David. David Shulberg, if you can unmute yourself, and then we'll come back to Michael.
Okay, I've got to find David. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Itamar, David Shulberg here. I just wanted to mention, after I did the program with you, Itamar, there was a kind of a celebration that the United Nations Relief Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees had been called to order by the European Parliament. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Have you heard the news that the European Union denies any connection to the European Parliament, is not carrying through whatsoever with any of the measures that have been put out by the European Parliament?
Well, there's the European Commission is the equivalent of the administration, the government, and the government makes its independent decisions. There is a relationship, of course, between them. but you have to study and see the relationship. But basically, you have a government that's making its own decisions, and you have parliament that's making different kind of legislation. So just look at the way their system is set up.
Okay, thank you. Michael, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes. Is that clear now?
We're good, thank you.
Yes. Hi, Itamar, Michael Bird. It's nice to speak to you again. You wrote for 27 years the names of the terrorists filling up Israeli jails keep changing, but the few puppeteers pulling the strings remain untouched by justice through Israel and VIP cards. You suggested the answer is that there is only one PA message, and the problem is that Israeli leaders, the media and international community have not mastered the Palestinian language of Palestinians. What do you mean by this?
The Palestinian Authority uses language that their own people understand that the international community doesn't understand. And I'll give you just two examples. One, which I really mentioned earlier during my presentation, the Palestinian Authority tells the world that they're against the occupation. To the international community, occupation means Judea and Samaria. To Palestinians, as you saw, the occupation means all of Israel. From Metula to Eilat, from the river to the sea, everything is an occupation with the internal Palestinian dialogue. So that's Palestinianese. To their own people, it means all of Israel. I'll give you a very important example, and I think that's what I focused on in that article that I wrote. The Palestinian Authority promotes terror in many, many different ways. And one of the things they do is they call to their people, we want popular, peaceful uprising. That's the term they use, popular, peaceful uprising. Now, to the international community, that sounds like legitimate civil disobedience. But I just want to give you a quote of Mahmoud Abbas. This was in 2015. The Palestinian Authority had started its knife intifada. Already 14 Israelis were murdered. Mahmoud Abbas went on TV. Now, they were murdered by individuals. I say popular because it wasn't an organized attack by Palestinian Authority. These were individuals who were motivated by the Palestinian incitement to murder, and already 14 Israelis were killed. Abbas went on TV and he said, Israelis are accusing us of murdering. We're not calling for murder. We only called for popular, peaceful uprising. And they said twice. And that's what this is. That's what this is. So murdering Israelis by knives and ramming them by cars is popular, peaceful uprising. If the Palestinian Authority sends suicide bombers like they did in 2000 to 2005, that is not peaceful, popular. That is an organized intifada. But as long as it's individuals who are doing the killing, that's called peaceful. So here you've got a perfect example of Palestinians. Mahmoud Abbas tells the international community, look, I went on TV and I called for peaceful, popular uprising. But every Palestinian knows that if you hear Palestinian Authority calling for peaceful, popular uprising, they want you to go out. You can throw stones, but you can also go out with a knife and stab and kill an Israeli. You can also run them down with a car. This is all under the Palestinianese of peaceful, popular uprising.
Wow, yeah. Okay, thank you. Now, Joseph, your turn. Please unmute yourself, and then we've got Jeff and Leon.
Good evening, Itamar. It's all very disturbing what I've heard tonight, and it brings to mind the many similarities to what happened in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, and where that led. And it's not difficult to see where the Palestinian propaganda is leading, especially now that the children are being involved. You've pointed out a couple of leaders, but behind underneath these leaders is a hierarchy of individuals who make these propaganda and school things happening. And also behind the leaders, there has to be some either funds or other thought processes.
Joseph, you've got to get to your question. Question, please.
That is the question. Are you aware of any of the underlings that are responsible for all of this? And are there any propaganda outlets which their leaders adhere to create such propaganda?
the problem is that, and this is something that I also mentioned in the earlier question that I mentioned in that article about the puppeteers, the same puppeteers are pulling the strings. The Israeli army is, and the international community is very good about condemning terrorists who commit terror attacks. They are constantly arresting the terrorists, and even the people who might have sent them immediately above them. But the puppeteers are Mahmoud Abbas and all the leadership of the Palestinian Authority. These are people who control Palestinian Authority. They're the ones who are giving the, or who are telling Palestinian Authority when they want them to raise the level of the messages. They tell the Fatah leadership when they want Fatah Facebook page to start promoting violence and terror. And those people tragically are untouchable. I'll give you an example. After the 2015-2016 terror wave, over 50, I think 54 Israelis and tourists were murdered by Palestinians in 2015-2016. They called it the Knife Intifada. One of the driving Palestinian leaders behind this was a person named Jibril Rajoub. Jibril Rajoub went on TV and he literally called for this. And not only did he call for it, he was asked when he was promoting the violence and the terror, he was asked by the interviewer, should we start blowing up buses in Tel Aviv? And he said, no, because the international community won't accept that. But if you kill a settler or a soldier with a knife, the international community doesn't care. So he literally was telling them what kind of tactics to use to murder. So we gave in a complaint to the Israeli police to arrest Jibril Rajoub. And I got calls from the police. I don't want to tell you the content of the phone calls, but eventually what happened, and then they just sat and didn't do anything. We had to go to the Supreme Court 3 times to demand that they respond to this. And then finally, after probably, it must have been a year and a half, they finally responded and they said, notwithstanding the evidence, I can't remember the exact language now, but there are also political considerations that have taken into effect, and therefore we're not going to be prosecuting. Now, here is the tragedy. If Israel would start arresting all the Palestinian leadership, and I mean PA, I don't mean Hamas, the Palestinian Authority leadership who are promoting terror, that would make them scared and they would have to stop. But tragically, the international community sees them as untouchable. Israel sees them as untouchable. And these people continue to sit there milking their own people from their money, getting wealthy. And whenever they need some violence to become more popular, they send the people out to kill and to be killed. And they stay sitting on their thrones. And this is a great tragedy. And eventually the only way we will stop Palestinian terror is if the entire leadership of the Palestinian Authority that has been involved, from the heads of PATV to the head of the PA, to Jibril Rajoub, who, by the way, is the secretary of the Central Committee. Jibril Rajoub, who I just mentioned, by the way, in the last Fatah vote for leadership, got the highest number of votes after Mahmoud Abbas. Mahmoud Abbas is 86. One of these days, he's going to be gone. The person who got the highest number of votes is Jibril Rajoub. He may be the next leader. This is an open terror supporter. There will never be peace until all of those leaders of the PA who are promoting terror are treated like the terrorists, like they are, like the heads of an organized crime gang that they are, and be put in jail.
Yeah, thank you, Itamar. Now, well, Jeff, we'll take your question. It'll probably be the last because we are coming up to time, so apologies to the others. Just before you ask your question, if you can unmute yourself, I will mention to anybody listening on J-Air that this stream will drop out within the next couple of minutes and you'll go back to the station programming. So thank you for joining us. Jeff, what is your question?
Shalom, Itamar. You mentioned a few seconds ago that Israelis consider the leadership untouchable. I wonder why, but I also wonder why on earth the rules of war that enable the carpet bombing of Berlin do not enable Israelis to wipe out the mortal enemy, which could be done in a few hours. You are allowed to do an awful lot of things to save lives, and if the rules of war, no matter what the international fetish is for criticizing Israel for doing virtually nothing more than what is enabled, if the rules of war enable action, proper action against the mortal enemy, why on earth under the aegis of saving Jewish lives can't they do anything?
So first of all, Israel is stricter. We're stricter on ourselves, or I'd say the government and the army leadership is stricter on ourselves than international law demands. And there's a big debate in Israel about this. I'll never forget during the Lebanese war, they Israeli military was very proud. They showed a picture of a pilot was about to destroy a rocket launcher. And then all of a sudden he saw that there were some civilians walking in the area of the rocket launcher. And all of a sudden he gets a message, no, cancel, can't shoot, can't fire. And then of course the rocket launcher disappeared. An Israeli Air Force was presenting this. Israeli was saying, look how humane we are. And a lot of Israelis were thinking, well, that rocket launcher is now going to attack Israeli civilians and may be used and will be used certainly to attempt to murder Israeli civilians, may murder Israeli civilians. And that's why the rules of international law allow Israel to destroy that rocket launcher. And yet we didn't do it. So that is a big problem. I wouldn't say it's a problem. That is, like I say, a big debate within Israel. Many people have had it now. A few weeks ago, we lost a soldier who was murdered on the border of the Gaza Strip because a Palestinian terrorist came up to the border, stuck a gun through the hole and shot him in the head. Now, you have to realize that he could have been shot because he was going into an area where it was prohibited to go. But he was having, of course, he looked like a civilian, and there were a lot of civilians there. Not every one of them had guns, so Israel wasn't shooting at them. The parents of the mother in particular of this Israeli soldier who was shot and murdered has condemned the government, condemned the army. She said, you murdered my son publicly on the cameras because you allowed these people to walk up to my son and murder him. So it is a major, major issue within Israel today. We'll see eventually Israel. I don't believe Israel is going to do carpet bombing in Gaza because there will be endless civilian casualties, and Israel won't be interested. But possibly they should destroy every single rocket launcher, no matter where it is. And maybe the Palestinian population, once this happens, they won't allow Hamas to put rocket launchers among civilians if too many civilians are killed when Israel attacks the rocket launchers.
Yes. Look, we could talk for another hour, but I'm afraid that we're going to have to wrap it up. Itamar, I want to thank you for joining us. I was hoping that your workload might be decreasing at some point in the near future, but it doesn't look like that's happening. So you do a wonderful job, and all strength to you. Now, you have a website. Just tell us what your website is, and people can go and have a look if they want more information.
Yes, please go to our website. It's palwatch.org. That's PALWATCH.org. On our website, you can then sign up to receive our bulletins. You can also do the following. If you want a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, I know the video is going to be available, but if you would like the copy of the PowerPoint presentation, you can write to me at Palestinian Media Watch. That's Itamar at palwatch.org. Or you can go into our website and write to us, say, I'd like a copy of the presentation, and we will send you the presentation so you can actually have the video, which has been recorded, and you can also have the PowerPoint. And the reason I offer this to you is because, if you're involved in advocacy for Israel, if you know students who are, you can pass this along. You can use this presentation to fight for Israel in any context that you want to.
Thank you. Itamar, you're a hero, your organisation are heroes, and thank you for the fantastic work that you do and for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, just time to say good night. If you want some more Israel or Jewish-related material, jump over now to the L'Chaim program with Morris Klein on 3ZZZ. That's on FM 92.3 or 3ZZZ.com.au. Other than that, we look forward to joining you all next week with Eugene Kontorovich, which will be another fascinating discussion. So from me and everybody, it's good night to you all. Bye for now.